The leader of one of rock and roll's most prolific orchestras wanted to create a song that was louder and unlike anything else that they'd ever recorded. But in the process, he upset his bandmates by doing everything on the track all by himself. And he unintentionally confused listeners with a made-up word that he sang in the hook. It's the story of the highest charting song in America by a band that many felt were the Beatles of the 70s. Story's coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember going to the double feature on the weekends as a young teen back in the 70s and 80s, you're going to dig this channel. Make sure that you subscribe below right now to relive the soundtrack of your life. Now, speaking of the soundtrack of our lives, I want to invite you to our upcoming exclusive live story and song series called Professor of Rock Live. It's at the Eccles Center Theater in Park City, Utah. It's actually where they have the Sundance Film Festival, one of the biggest theaters there. This is going to be really cool, very special evening. It's like MTV Unplugged meets inside the Actors Studio, where I'm going to sit down with a featured artist and they'll share never-before-told stories about their life, their music, their career, along with very intimate performances of their songs and some really cool surprises as well. You're going to feel like we're in your living room. And to get all the details about the first 3 shows, we're going to have 5 in all, and how you can buy tickets, click on the Professor of Rock live link below, right below. And make sure to tell me if you're coming. It'd be fun to talk music with you after the show. All right, let's get into it. ELO, the Electric Light Orchestra. They were famous for their distinctive symphonic rock full of lush strings and classical music styled arrangements with the rock and roll dynamic. Since the group's formation in 1970, ELO evolved into a perennial powerhouse, releasing 4 gold or platinum selling LPs and 15 top 40 hits around the globe, this in a 10-year period. But after 7 studio albums, ELO's leader and frontman Jeff Lynne grew tired of the sound. It was time for ELO to mix it up to avoid the pratfalls of predictability. In 1979, Lynne was steadfastly focused at the Musicland studios in Munich, Germany. He was in the homeward stretch of completing ELO's 8th LP, Discovery, and he wanted one more song to round out the record. Now, Jeff Lynne felt the album didn't have enough loud rockers. In Jeff Lynne's words, what he sought was a great big galloping ball of distortion with no strings attached, so to speak. What he came up with was the track that became the biggest hit in America for ELO, a song about an uppity woman who thinks she's too good for the guy she's with. Of course, titled Don't Bring Me Down. Now, around 1965, Jeff Lynne acquired his first piece of studio recording equipment. It was a Bang & Olufsen Beochord 2000 Deluxe Stereo reel-to-reel tape deck. Now, the unit allowed multi-tracking recording between left and right channels. It was the device that taught Lynne how to be a producer, and it served him well throughout a career spanning well over half a century. In 1966, Lynne joined the lineup of the Night Riders as a guitarist. This was after responding to an advertisement in the periodical The Birmingham Evening Mail. The Night Riders soon changed their name to The Idle Race, despite recording 2 critically acclaimed albums with The Idle Race and producing their second record. Success eluded Jeff Lynne. So in 1970, Jeff Lynne, he accepted an offer from his friend Roy Wood to join the lineup of a band that was generating some real traction called The Move. That was the pivotal step for Jeff Lynne that led to the inception of ELO with co-founders Roy Wood and Bev Bevan. Keyboardist Richard Tandy came on board a short time later, and along with Bevan and Lynne, was the most consistent member of the band following Wood's departure. ELO's early live performances were, how do we say it, chaotic. Their sound quality was really poor. Now, this is because of the string instruments competing against the guitars and drums. Wood's stage presence created its own kind of discord that contradicted the band's vision for musical exuberance. Wood was in constant motion on stage, moving from instrument to instrument. One moment, he'd be playing the bass, and then the cello, and then the saxophone. Tensions within the band escalated to the point that Wood left ELO at the beginning of the recording sessions for the second album, ELO 2, and they formed a new group called Wizard. ELO's breakthrough hit materialized just before Wood's exit with the single 10538 Overture, which that climbed to number 9 in the UK and number 5 in France. A cover of Chuck Berry's Roll Over Beethoven followed. That went to number 6 in the UK in 1973. And Showdown peaked at number 12 that same year. '74, that was ELO's breakout in the US when Jeff Lynne's ballad Can't Get It Out of My Head rose to number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100. Great song. Now, over the next decade, ELO was a fixture on American radio. In 1979, Lynne and his bandmates were working on songs for Discovery, the follow-up to their biggest-selling album to date, the double LP sensation Out of the Blue. That sold over 10 million units around the world. As the primary composer and arranger for ELO, Jeff Lynne had assembled 8 songs for Discovery, but the record needed another track for Lynne to consider it a finished work. His assessment was that what the batch of tunes really lacked was something loud and different from your typical ELO song. Truth is that Jeff Lynne was a bit fed up with the songs that were dominated by a string section. There was also the issue with the musicians' union that saw hired players stop playing before a track was finished in the studio because the end of their term was approaching. Session players approached performing on an album much the same way that a 9-to-5 employee approaches being hired for an hourly service job. So Lynne decided that he would create a song that had no strings at all. It would be the first ELO song that did not feature a string section. The stringless tune became Don't Bring Me Down, evolving from a percussion track that was developed from a drum loop that Lynne spliced together from On the Run, another song that Lynne had made for the Discovery album. Once Lynne had the percussion line for Don't Bring Me Down, he slowed the tempo and then heavily compressed it so that every instrument would sound bigger and more dynamic. After he compressed the track, Jeff Lynne added a bass riff and 5 or 6 piano parts, thinking that using multiple pianos layered together would make the song sound even larger and more seismic. Lynne realized years later that a single properly tuned piano would have produced the same result that he wanted. Using multiple piano tracks was really completely unnecessary. Lynne played every instrument on Don't Bring Me Down, which really upset the rest of the band. For the first time, the resident string trio of Mick Kaminsky, Hugh McDowell, and Melvin Gell was not used on an ELO record. The decision not to use the trio was a sign of things to come for Jeff Lynne and ELO. Now, Don't Bring Me Down, it demonstrated Lynne's desire to progress ELO into the 80s without the requirement to have an orchestra included in all their songs. Working as the engineer while Lynne and ELO were recording at the Musicland Studios in Munich, Reinhold Mack has always contended that he inspired the inception of Don't Bring Me Down. After suggesting to Jeff Lynne that he should ditch the strings and just have a jam session. Mack's claims have never been substantiated since Lynne, Bevan, or Tandy have never mentioned Mack's involvement on the creation of the song, and only Jeff Lynne has been credited at this point. Jeff Lynne wrote Don't Bring Me Down on a piano in the studio. It was quickly written in a fashion similar to the way that Lynne wrote the top 10 ELO smash, Evil Woman. Great song. Man, I love that song. The Face the Music album was all but done, and when Lynne listened back to each track, he didn't hear what he thought was a stone cold single. So he sent the rest of the band out to attend a football game, and that's where he came up with Evil Woman, pretty much on the spot. Apparently, the song was inspired by a real woman in Jeff's life, but he wouldn't sing and tell, per se. That same woman has appeared as the subject of many of Jeff Lynne's written songs, including the person he undoubtedly had in mind when he conceived Don't Bring Me Down. For most ELO songs, Jeff Lynne would typically add a punishing series of overdubs after getting a complete take. But Don't Bring Me Down was also unique in that it was a very simple, straightforward track. Artists like Tom Petty and George Harrison talked about how much fun that they had working with Jeff Lynne, largely because of his sense of humor. Jeff Lynne showed his comedic nature when he added a 1, 2, 3 count in to the intro Don't Bring Me Down, even though there was really nobody with him in the studio at that point. Lynne finished the musical track with the sound of a metal fire door located inside Musicland Studios slamming shut immediately after the cold vocal ending. The last component was to layer on the recording was Lynne's lead vocal track, and that is where the straightforward song with uncomplicated lyrics got really interesting. When Lynne was singing the Don't Bring Me Down hook, there was a gap, and without even thinking, he shouted out Gruce, which he figured was a nonsensical word that just came to him for really no apparent reason. Don't bring me down, Gruce. During the final mix sessions at Musicland Studios, Lynne played the recording back to engineer Reinhold Mack, who was German. And Mack expressed his complete surprise that Lynne had used a German word in the song's hook. The German word Gruß in the standard Latin alphabet means greeting in the German language, although Lynne had no intention of using a German word or a word with any meaning in any language when he improvised. When Mack brought Gruß to his attention, Lynne was really taken aback. As Lynne remembers it, Mack said, "How do you know that word?" And Lynne said, "What word?" And then Mack responded, Gruß. It means greet you in German. Lynne was, of course, pleasantly surprised that what he uttered sounded like a German word for a greeting. So he decided it'd be cool just to leave it in the final version of the song. Now, Lynne's improvisation became really the most memorable part of Don't Bring Me Down. Don't bring me down. When the song was released as the third single from Discovery after Shine a Little Love, you shine a little love on my life, and The Diary of Horace Wimp, and a voice from above said, Horace Wimp, this is your life. The radio audience heard the line as Don't Bring Me Down, Bruce. Even though Gruß is written in the liner notes for the Discovery album, it was disregarded or overlooked by listeners who replaced the word with the more recognizable Bruce, when they sang along. I mean, we hear what we hear, and we start singing it, and we get used to it. It's as if Lynne was singing to an imaginary person named Bruce. Let's be honest, it's much more fun to sing Don't Bring Me Down, Bruce, than Don't Bring Me Down, Gruß. Once again, Mack had a different recollection of what happened in the studio back in '79. Mack's memory of the genesis of Lynne's shouted Mondegreen was that Lynne actually sang Bruce as a joke in advance of an Australian tour, referring to how many Australian guys are named Bruce. Mack said the Gruß was added later because Lynne never intended to keep Bruce in the final version, since he was just horsing around in the studio. Mac compared it to Freddie Mercury clowning at the end of Queen's 1985 single One Vision, singing Fried Chicken instead of the song's title. There was even a rumor that flared up about Don't Bring Me Down that Jeff Lynne's inclusion of Bruce was a veiled reference to a lawyer representing ELO named Bruce. Bottom line is, Jeff Lynne totally ad-libbed Bruce, no motive. I mean, he didn't sing Bruce, but he too had fun with the Mongan, which is the technical term for a word given to misheard lyrics that perhaps make sense, but are in fact completely wrong. Don't bring me down. Not long after Don't Bring Me Down became a huge smash, Lynne began singing the chorus as Don't Bring Me Down, Bruce, during ELO concerts, to the delight of the audience, who sing the line along with him at the top of their lungs, whether they know the original utterance or not. Well, now you do know if you didn't know. Lynne even sang Bruce instead of Groose when he recorded an updated solo version of Don't Bring Me Down in 2012, heavily rolling the R in Bruce like he did in the original version as if he were singing in a German accent. Lynne's solo version was used as the music for a highly advertised media campaign for Budweiser beer. So Don't Bring Me Down was also adopted as the theme song for astronauts enjoying their time in space. Now, the song was played to astronauts on the Space Shuttle Columbia as their wake-up call on July 6, 1996. The crew was on a mission that was taking longer than expected to return home because of bad landing conditions. Columbia, ELO's record label, attempted to connect the song with the Skylab space station, which crashed to Earth on July 11, 1979, after being in space for 6 years. The label placed ads in trade magazines promoting Don't Bring Me Down when it was a brand new single by dedicating it to the Skylab. Don't Bring Me Down was placed in the movies Donnie Brasco in 1997, The In-Laws, that was in 2003, College Road in 2008, Super 8 in 2011. Don't Bring Me Down was ELO's highest charting single in the US, as I said. Rose to number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100 after notching the number 3 position. It was the second highest ascender for ELO on the UK chart, next to the title track of the motion picture Xanadu featuring Olivia Newton-John. The song went to the top 5 in Belgium, Germany, the Netherlands, Switzerland, and Austria, and atop the National Pop Survey in Canada. Jeff Lynne and ELO were one of the biggest selling acts of the 70s, and Don't Bring Me Down came out during the band's incredible peak. It's like my hero, Casey Kasem. He said it best when he called the Electric Light Orchestra a 7-man supergroup, and he described them as amazing for hitting the top 40 on the Billboard Hot 100 a remarkable 6 times in a 1-year period from August 1979 to August 1980. Jeff Lynne is a legendary maestro of music. He later became the go-to for lavish production and album overseer. He was a secret weapon to the success of the triple platinum Traveling Wilburys Volume 1. He first came to prominence in producing outside of ELO through his spectacular work on George Harrison's Cloud 9 that came out in 1987. I got my mind set on you. Since then, Jeff Lynne has crafted some true beauties, some true masterpieces over the last 35 years as a producer, as well as an essential writing and performing mechanism that has enriched so many of the legends in Traveling Wilburys. Right after that success, Lynne helped Tom Petty and Mike Campbell produce the exquisite Tom Petty solo record Full Moon Fever, which has since gone 6 times platinum, and yielded not just several hit singles, but master classics, Free Fallin' and I Won't Back Down. Free fallin', won't back down. Hey, covered those before. That same year, Jeff Lynne would be at the helm of the great Roy Orbison's final studio album, the multi-platinum seller Mystery Girl. That was released just after Roy Orbison passed away. Roy Orbison called Jeff Lynne the best producer I ever worked with. That's a monumental tribute from a true legend. Maybe the greatest compliment that Jeff Lynne ever received, though, is when the Beatles chose him to co-produce their first single together since they broke up, when in 1995, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr took an old John Lennon demo called Free as a Bird to the top 10 on the American charts and to number 2 on the UK charts. Apparently, George Martin turned down the session because he was experiencing difficulty with his hearing. And George Harrison suggested Mr. ELO Jeff Lynne, who just did a masterful job. George Harrison went as far as to say that they would either work with Jeff Lynne or he wouldn't participate at all. That's a very high compliment to give to the man who cried Bruce. Or was it Bruce? Leave us a comment about Don't Bring Me Down and the amazing Jeff Lynne, a sensational producer, singer, songwriter. What are your memories and your feelings on his many masterpieces, including Don't Bring Me Down? Now, if you like our content, we do invite you to be a full-time part of our music community by subscribing below right now. Make sure to click the bell so you don't miss out on our daily content. Also, check us out on Patreon and our merch. That helps us keep the music alive, and that is the whole idea. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.